Birthday at 40 and not even one husband? Ah, this is embarrassing. You're 40 and fabulous. Everything is unforgettable. This is the best day ever.
40 years old and still single, Naomi? What kind of curse is following you? The words cut through me like a knife dipped in acid, burning through every layer of dignity I had carefully wrapped around myself that morning. I stood there in my cousin Michelle's living room, surrounded by family members who had gathered for her daughter's engagement party, and I could feel every single pair of eyes boring into me. The champagne glass in my hand trembled slightly, but I refused to let them see how deep their words went. My Aunt Vanessa, the one who had just spoken, sat there with her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her wine glass, waiting for my response. But what could I say? That I had given up my youth, my dreams, my everything to raise my siblings after our parents passed away in that terrible accident? That while other women my age were building families, I was working 3 jobs to put food on the table and clothes on their backs? Maybe if you had focused less on playing mother hen and more on finding a husband, you wouldn't be standing here alone, another voice chimed in. It was my cousin Brianna, 5 years younger than me, with her husband Connor's arm draped possessively around her shoulders. She had 3 children already and never missed an opportunity to remind me of what I didn't have. The irony wasn't lost on me. When we were teenagers, she used to come to our house crying because her parents were always fighting, and I was the one who would hold her and tell her everything would be okay. Now here she was, looking at me like I was something to be pitied, something broken that couldn't be fixed. The room felt smaller with each passing second, the walls closing in as more relatives joined in the conversation about my singleness. You know what they say about women who can't keep a man? Someone whispered, loud enough for me to hear. There must be something wrong with them. The laughter that followed was like thunder in my ears, each chuckle a reminder of how far I had fallen in their eyes. But they didn't know my story. They didn't know that every morning I woke up at 4:30 to prepare breakfast for my siblings before my first job. They didn't know about the nights I stayed up mending their school uniforms because we couldn't afford new ones. They didn't know about the scholarships I turned down, the job opportunities in other cities I rejected, all because I couldn't leave them alone. Before I continue my story, let me take a moment to ask you something important. If you're watching this and you've ever felt judged, overlooked, or misunderstood because of choices you made out of love, please subscribe to Pressify Stories right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our videos. And I want to know, where are you watching from? Comment your country below before we continue, because this story I'm about to tell you will change how you see sacrifice, family, and what true love really means. Trust me, what happened to me will make you question everything you thought you knew about loyalty and blood relations. My name is Naomi Parker, and this is my story. A story that began 23 years ago when I was just 17 years old, standing in a hospital corridor with my arms around my younger siblings, Sarah, who was 14, and Jeremy, who was only 11. The doctor's words echoed in that sterile hallway. I'm sorry for your loss. Your parents didn't survive the accident. Just like that, in one terrible moment on a rainy Thursday evening, I became mother, father, and guardian to 2 children who looked at me with eyes full of fear and confusion. The weight of their future settled on my shoulders like a mountain I would carry for the next 2 decades. Our parents, bless their souls, hadn't left much behind. There was the small house in Houston with a mortgage that still had 15 years on it, an old car that barely started on cold mornings, and a life insurance policy that barely covered the funeral expenses. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that first night after the funeral, looking at the bills spread out before me like a map to an impossible destination. The electricity bill was overdue, the water company had sent a final notice, and the mortgage payment was coming up in 2 weeks. Sarah sat across from me trying to be brave, while Jeremy had cried himself to sleep on the couch, still wearing the black suit we had borrowed from our neighbor for the funeral. What are we going to do, Naomi? Sarah had asked, her voice small and broken. She was supposed to start high school that year, had been so excited about joining the drama club, about the new possibilities that awaited her. Now she sat there looking lost and afraid, and I knew I had to be strong for her, for both of them. "We're going to be okay," I told her, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I promise you we're going to be okay. I'll make sure of it." Those words became my mantra, my prayer, my battle cry for the years that followed. The first thing I did was drop out of high school. I was 3 months away from graduation, had already been accepted to 2 colleges with partial scholarships, but none of that mattered anymore. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Richardson, came to the house personally to try to convince me to stay in school. "Naomi, you're so close," she said, her eyes pleading with me to reconsider. "There has to be another way." But there wasn't. I needed to work, needed to earn money immediately. The mortgage company wasn't going to wait for me to graduate. The grocery store didn't accept good intentions as payment. So I thanked her for everything she had done for me, handed back my textbooks, and walked away from my dreams of becoming a nurse. My first job was at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Houston, working the night shift from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. The pay wasn't much, but they let me take home leftover food, which meant I could feed my siblings without spending money we didn't have. After my shift at the diner, I would rush home, wake Sarah and Jeremy, make sure they had breakfast and their homework was done, then send them off to school. Once they were gone, I would sleep for 3 hours before heading to my second job at a grocery store, stocking shelves from noon to 5 in the evening. By the time the kids came home from school, I would be there to help with homework, make dinner, and pretend that everything was normal, that I wasn't exhausted beyond belief, that my feet didn't ache so badly I wanted to cry. Jeremy struggled the most in those early days. He would have nightmares about the accident, would wake up screaming for our parents. I would hold him, rock him like he was still a baby, and sing the same lullabies our mother used to sing. Sarah tried to help as much as she could, but she was dealing with her own grief, her own struggles. She had inherited our mother's beauty, the same high cheekbones, the same graceful way of moving through the world, and boys at school started noticing her. I had to be vigilant, had to make sure she didn't fall into the wrong crowd, didn't make choices that would derail her future. It was exhausting being everything to everyone, but I didn't have the luxury of being tired. The first time I thought about dating was when I was 22. Jeremy was 16 by then. Sarah was 19 and in her second year of community college. Things had stabilized somewhat. I had found a better job at a medical supplies company working in their warehouse. The pay was better and they offered health insurance, which was a blessing we desperately needed. That's where I met Marcus Hughes. He was 28, worked in the shipping department, and had a smile that could light up the darkest room. He would bring me coffee during our breaks, tell me jokes that made me laugh even on my worst days, and slowly, carefully, he worked his way into my heart. Marcus knew about my situation from the beginning. I was always upfront about my responsibilities, about the fact that my siblings came first, would always come first until they were able to stand on their own feet. He said he understood, said he admired my dedication, my sacrifice. "Not many people would do what you're doing, Naomi," he told me one evening as we sat in his car outside my house. "You're special. That's why I want to be with you." For 6 months, I believed him. I believed that I had found someone who could see past my circumstances, who could love me for who I was, burdens and all. The truth about Marcus revealed itself slowly, like poison seeping into water. First, it was small things. He would forget his wallet when we went out to eat, promising to pay me back later. Later never came. Then it was borrowing $20 here, $50 there, always with a story about unexpected expenses or delayed paychecks. I wanted to believe him because I needed to believe that someone could love me, that I wasn't just the girl who gave up everything for her siblings. But the requests got bigger. He needed $300 to fix his car, $500 for a course that would help him get promoted, $800 for his mother's medical bills. I gave him everything he asked for, even when it meant we had to eat rice and beans for weeks, even when it meant I had to work overtime shifts that left me so exhausted I could barely stand. Sarah noticed first. "Where's all your money going, Naomi?" she asked one evening when I told her we couldn't afford to buy her the textbook she needed for her psychology class. "You're working more hours than ever, but we seem to have less." I made excuses, told her that bills had gone up, that there were unexpected house repairs. I was too ashamed to tell her the truth, that I was subsidizing a man who claimed to love me but treated me like an ATM machine. The relationship with Marcus ended on a Tuesday afternoon that I'll never forget. I had gotten off work early because I wasn't feeling well, a combination of exhaustion and stress that had been building for weeks. I decided to surprise him at his apartment, maybe have him take care of me for once instead of the other way around. When I got there, using the key he had given me, I found him in bed with another woman. Not just any woman. Alexis from accounting at his job. The one he had told me was just a friend who needed career advice. They were wrapped in sheets I had bought for him in the apartment where I had paid his rent more than once. "Naomi!" Marcus jumped up, scrambling for his clothes. "This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like, and we both knew it. Alexis had the decency to look embarrassed, gathering her clothes and rushing past me without a word. I stood there in the doorway of that bedroom feeling something inside me break. Not my heart. That was already damaged goods. It was my faith in love, my belief that someone could see past my responsibilities and love me anyway. "You need to understand," Marcus started, but I held up my hand to stop him. "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I understand that you've been using me, that every sweet word, every promise, every I love you was just a way to keep the money flowing." He tried to follow me as I left, making excuses, blaming me for being too focused on my siblings, for not giving him enough attention. "A man has needs, Naomi," he shouted as I walked to my car. "You're always tired, always worried about Sarah and Jeremy. When was the last time you put me first?" I turned to face him one last time. "I put you first every time I gave you money I couldn't afford to give," I said. "Every time I chose to trust you instead of listening to my instincts. But you're right about one thing. I am always going to put my siblings first because they've never betrayed me. They've never used me. They've never made me feel like my love wasn't enough." That was the last time I saw Marcus, but the damage was done. Word spread quickly through our social circle about our breakup. Though the version that made the rounds painted me as the woman who couldn't keep a man, who was so obsessed with playing mother to her siblings that she drove away the one person who tried to love her. Nobody knew about the money he had taken, about the lies he had told. I didn't correct them. I didn't have the energy to fight for my reputation when I had real battles to fight at home. After Marcus, I threw myself even deeper into providing for Sarah and Jeremy. Sarah was excelling in college, had discovered a passion for business administration that surprised us both. She would stay up late studying, creating business plans for imaginary companies, dreaming of the empire she would build one day. I would sit with her sometimes, listening to her ideas, marveling at how brilliant she was, how much potential she had. "You could go back to school too, Naomi," she would say. "It's never too late." But it was too late for me. My time had passed. My role was to make sure she and Jeremy had their chance. Jeremy found his calling in computer science. He was naturally gifted with technology, could fix any computer problem, could code like he was born speaking that language. I remember the day he showed me a program he had written, his eyes shining with pride and excitement. "This could be the future, Naomi," he said. "This could change everything for us." I used every penny I had saved to buy him a better computer, enrolled him in online courses that would supplement what he was learning in school. His teacher said he was exceptional, that with the right opportunities he could go far. The years passed in a blur of work, sacrifice, and small victories. Sarah graduated with honors, immediately landing a job at a marketing firm downtown. The day she got the call offering her the position, We celebrated with Chinese takeout, the expensive kind from the good restaurant, not our usual budget option. "This is just the beginning," she said, raising her glass of soda in a toast. "Soon you won't have to work so hard, Naomi. I'm going to take care of you the way you've taken care of us." Jeremy echoed her sentiment when he graduated 2 years later with 3 job offers from tech companies fighting over him. "You've given us everything," he said at his graduation dinner. "Now it's our turn to give back." But life has a way of changing people, of making them forget the struggles once they've reached the other side. Sarah moved into a nice apartment in a trendy part of Houston, started shopping at stores I couldn't even afford to walk into. Her calls became less frequent. Our weekly dinners turned into monthly ones, then every other month, then only on holidays. She was busy, she said. Her job was demanding. Her social life was important for networking. I understood, I said. I was proud of her, I said. And I was proud even as I felt the distance growing between us like a canyon I couldn't cross. Jeremy followed a similar path. His job at a tech startup consumed him, body and soul. He was part of something revolutionary, he said. He was changing the world, he said. He moved to Austin, where the tech scene was exploding, promising to visit often. Often became rarely. Rarely became never. Our phone calls were brief, distracted, with him always having to go to another meeting, another conference, another opportunity that couldn't wait. "I'll call you back, Naomi," became his standard goodbye. But the callback never came. 5 years after Sarah started working, 7 years after the breakup with Marcus, I found myself alone in the house that had once been filled with the chaos of raising teenagers. The mortgage was finally paid off. I had made the last payment with tears streaming down my face, remembering my parents, wishing they could see that I had kept my promise to keep the house, to keep the family together. But what family was left? The rooms that had once held Sarah's dreams and Jeremy's laughter were now storage spaces for memories that seemed to belong to another lifetime. I was 38 when I decided to reach out, to try to bridge the gap that had formed between me and my siblings. Sarah was doing incredibly well, had been promoted to senior marketing director, was featured in a business magazine as one of Houston's 40 under 40 to watch. The article mentioned her humble beginnings, but somehow forgot to mention the sister who had made her success possible. Jeremy had co-founded his own startup, had investors throwing money at him, was being called the next big thing in tech. His company's website had a bio that talked about his journey, his struggles after losing his parents, but I wasn't mentioned there either. It was as if I had been erased from their stories, edited out like a mistake that needed correcting. Still, they were my siblings, my babies who I had raised, and I missed them terribly. So I swallowed my pride and drove to Sarah's apartment on a Saturday afternoon, bringing her favorite cookies from the bakery she used to love as a child. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise her, to see her face light up the way it used to when I would come home with unexpected treats. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, with a doorman who looked at me skeptically when I said I was there to see Sarah Parker in the penthouse. "Is she expecting you?" he asked. And I should have known then, should have recognized the warning in his tone. Sarah answered the door wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than I made in a month. Her face went through a series of expressions when she saw me. Surprise, confusion, and then something else, something I didn't want to name. "Naomi," she said, not moving aside to let me in. "What are you doing here?" Not, "How are you?" or "It's so good to see you," or "I've missed you." Just, "What are you doing here?" Like I was a delivery person who had gotten the wrong address. "I wanted to see you," I said, holding out the box of cookies with hands that had started to tremble. "I thought we could catch up, maybe have coffee like we used to." She looked at the cookies like they were contaminated, then back at me, and I saw myself through her eyes. My old coat that I had owned for 10 years, my shoes that were comfortable but far from stylish, my hair that I cut myself to save money. I saw the poor relation, the embarrassment, the reminder of a past she wanted to forget. This isn't a good time, she said, glancing back into her apartment where I could hear voices, laughter, the clink of glasses. I have people over, important people, for work. The emphasis on important wasn't lost on me. I wasn't important. I was the opposite of important. I was the single sister at 40, the one who had nothing to show for her life except the success of siblings who no longer wanted to claim her. Sarah, please, I said, hating how desperate I sounded. It's been months since we've talked properly. I just want to know how you're doing, want to hear about your life. She sighed, the kind of sigh you give when someone is being particularly tiresome. Look, Naomi, I appreciate everything you did for us growing up. I really do, but I've moved on. I have a different life now, a professional image to maintain. She paused, searching for words. Having a sister who's still single at your age, still working minimum wage jobs, it doesn't fit with who I am now. People ask questions I don't want to answer. The words hit me like physical blows, each one targeted to cause maximum damage. I'm an embarrassment to you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. After everything I sacrificed? Her face hardened then, any trace of the little girl I had raised disappearing completely. I didn't ask you to sacrifice anything, she said coldly. You made those choices. And look where they got you. 40, alone, with nothing to show for it. Maybe if you had focused on yourself instead of trying to be our mother, you wouldn't be standing here begging for scraps of attention from people who have actually made something of themselves. She started to close the door, but I put my hand out to stop it. Sarah, you're my sister. We're family. She laughed then, but there was no warmth in it. Family, Naomi, look at yourself. You're a walking reminder of poverty, of struggle, of everything I've worked to leave behind. I have a reputation to protect, a career that depends on the image I project. I can't have you showing up here looking like... She gestured at me, like this. It's bad enough that people know I grew up poor. I don't need them seeing the evidence of it standing at my door. So that's it? I asked, tears starting to blur my vision. 23 years of raising you, of making sure you had everything you needed, of loving you more than life itself, and you're just going to close the door on me? She looked me straight in the eye, no emotion on her face. That door's been closed for a while, Naomi. You're just now noticing. Don't come back here. If you need money, send me an email with your bank details. I'll transfer something monthly, like a charity case. But this? She gestured between us. This relationship you're trying to force, it's over. We're not those people anymore. At least I'm not. The door closed with a definitive click, and I stood there in that elegant hallway, holding a box of cookies that nobody wanted, feeling like my heart had been ripped out and stomped on by designer heels. The doorman escorted me out, his face carefully neutral, but I could see the pity in his eyes. He had probably seen this before. The poor relation turned away, the family member who didn't fit the new narrative. I sat in my car in the parking garage for an hour, crying until I couldn't breathe, until my chest hurt from the sobs that wouldn't stop coming. 2 weeks later, still reeling from Sarah's rejection, I decided to try with Jeremy. Maybe he would be different. He had always been more sensitive, more aware of others' feelings. I had protected him from the worst of our struggles, had made sure he never went to bed hungry, never felt unsafe, never doubted that he was loved. Surely that counted for something. Austin was a 3-hour drive, but I made it on a Sunday, timing it so I would arrive when he was likely to be home, not at his office working on his next big innovation. His house was modest compared to Sarah's penthouse, but it was in a nice neighborhood, the kind where children rode bikes on the sidewalk and people walked their designer dogs in the evening. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding with hope and fear in equal measure. When he opened the door, I saw surprise flash across his face, quickly followed by something that looked like annoyance. Naomi? What are you doing in Austin? Again, not a warm welcome, not an invitation inside, just confusion about my presence, like I was a problem that needed solving. I came to see you, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I thought we could have lunch, catch up. It's been so long, Jeremy. He looked back into his house, then at me, and I could see him calculating, weighing his options. This really isn't a good time, he said. I have a lot of work to do. Deadline's coming up. You should have called first. The criticism stung. Since when did I need an appointment to see my baby brother? The boy whose tears I had dried, whose dreams I had nurtured. I did call, I said quietly. Multiple times. You never answered, never called back. He had the grace to look slightly ashamed, but it passed quickly. I've been busy, Naomi. Running a startup isn't easy. I don't have time for... He trailed off, but I heard what he didn't say. He didn't have time for me. 5 minutes, I pleaded. Just 5 minutes of your time. That's all I'm asking. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him like he was protecting his home from contamination. We stood on his porch, two strangers who shared blood and history, but nothing else. Look, Naomi, he started, using the same tone I imagined he used in board meetings. I know you probably expected things to be different once Sarah and I became successful. You probably thought we'd all be this close family unit forever. But life doesn't work that way. People grow, people change, people move in different directions. We're not just people, I said, my voice breaking. We're family. I raised you back. I gave up everything to make sure you could stand where you're standing right now. His face hardened at that. And I'm grateful, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. But gratitude doesn't mean I owe you my life. I've worked hard to get where I am. The tech world is brutal, image conscious. Having a sister who's in your situation. It raises questions I don't want to answer. My situation? I repeated, feeling anger starting to replace hurt. You mean being single? Being working class? Being the woman who sacrificed her youth so you could have yours? He flinched but didn't back down. Yes, all of that. Do you know what people say when they find out about you? They wonder what's wrong with you that you're still single at 40. They make jokes about crazy cat ladies and spinsters. They question my background. Wonder if there's instability in the family. I've worked too hard to let that kind of talk derail my career. So you're ashamed of me, I said, stating it as fact, not a question. Both of you are ashamed of the woman who loved you more than herself, who made sure you never went hungry, never felt abandoned, never doubted that you mattered. He couldn't meet my eyes then, staring at something over my shoulder. It's not about shame, he said finally. It's about reality. You and I live in different worlds now, Naomi. Your world, it doesn't intersect with mine anymore. Can't you understand that? What I understand, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, is that success has made you cruel. That money has made you forget where you came from, who helped you get there. That your startup, your investors, your image, they're all more important than the person who sang you to sleep when you had nightmares, who worked 18-hour days to buy you that first computer, who believed in you when nobody else even knew your name. He sighed, rubbing his face with hands that had never known hard labor, had never been cracked and bleeding from too much manual work. What do you want from me, Naomi? Money? Is that what this is about? The accusation was like a slap. I have never asked you for a single penny, I said, my voice rising. Not once. All I wanted was to maintain a relationship with the siblings I raised. All I wanted was to not be erased from your lives like I never existed. Well, that's not possible, he said bluntly. I have a girlfriend now, Courtney. She comes from a good family, old money. How do I explain you to her? How do I introduce you at company events? This is my sister who's 40 and single, who works as a cleaner. Do you understand how that would look? Each word was a nail in the coffin of our relationship, sealing it shut with the finality of his indifference. You don't have to explain me to anyone, I said quietly, all fight leaving me. Because you're right. We don't live in the same world anymore. In my world, family means something. Love means something. Sacrifice is remembered and honored. In your world, apparently, those things are liabilities to be hidden, embarrassments to be managed. I turned to leave, but he called after me. Naomi, wait. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe he would apologize. Maybe he would remember who we used to be to each other. But when I turned back, he was holding out his wallet. "Here," he said, pulling out several $100 bills. "Take this. Buy yourself something nice. And please don't come back. It's better for everyone if we keep our distance." I looked at the money in his outstretched hand, at the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes, at the boy I had raised becoming a stranger who thought cash could absolve him of cruelty. "Keep your money, Jeremy," I said. "I don't want it. I never wanted it. All I wanted was to matter to you, a fraction as much as you mattered to me. But I see now that was too much to ask." I drove back to Houston that day with my heart shattered into so many pieces I didn't think it could ever be put back together. The rejection from both siblings, delivered with such cold precision, had broken something fundamental inside me. They had taken my sacrifices, my love, my years of dedication, and deemed them worthless, embarrassing, something to be hidden and denied. The worst part was that I couldn't even hate them for it. I had raised them to be ambitious, to reach for more, to not let anything hold them back. I just never imagined that the thing they would see as holding them back would be me. The news of my siblings' rejection spread through our extended family and neighborhood with the speed of wildfire in drought season. I don't know who told whom, but within a week everyone seemed to know that Sarah and Jeremy had cut me off, had deemed me unworthy of their new lives. And instead of sympathy, instead of understanding, I faced a new wave of mockery and judgment that made their rejection seem almost kind by comparison. "Well, what did you expect?" my Aunt Vanessa said when she accidentally ran into me at the grocery store. "You can't raise children to fly and then expect them to stay in the nest with you, especially not when the nest is, well, what it is." She looked pointedly at my shopping cart, filled with generic brands and items on sale. "Maybe if you had focused on building your own life instead of living through theirs, things would be different." My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, was even less subtle. She caught me getting my mail one evening and launched into a monologue about how she always knew something was wrong with me. "No man at 40, no children, and now your own siblings want nothing to do with you? That's not normal, Naomi. Maybe you should look into therapy. Figure out what energy you're putting out that pushes everyone away." She said it with fake concern, but her eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of someone who finally had confirmation of what they'd always suspected, that I was somehow fundamentally broken. The family WhatsApp group, which I had never been very active in, became a source of constant pain. Screenshots were shared of Sarah's Instagram, showing her at fancy events, wearing designer clothes, living the life everyone dreamed of. "At least one of them made it out," someone commented, as if our childhood home had been a prison instead of a place filled with love despite the struggles. Jeremy's success was equally celebrated, with cousins sharing articles about his startup, his innovations, his bright future. Nobody mentioned me, except in whispers and private messages I wasn't supposed to know about. The breaking point came at my cousin Tyler's birthday dinner. I hadn't wanted to go, but staying away would have caused even more talk, so I put on my best dress, which was 5 years old but still looked decent, and showed up with a gift I could barely afford. The moment I walked in, conversation stopped. Eyes followed me as I made my way to an empty seat at the far end of the table, as far from the center of attention as possible. "So, Naomi," my cousin Madison said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Still single, I see. No +1 tonight either?" The laughter that followed was cruel, pointed, meant to wound. "You know, there are apps now. Even women your age can find someone. Maybe someone divorced, with kids who need a mother figure. Since you're so good at playing that role." "Leave her alone," my Uncle Gabriel said. But his defense was worse than the attack. "Not everyone is meant for marriage. Some people are just meant to be alone. It's not her fault she's," he gestured vaguely at me, "the way she is." "The way I am?" I finally spoke up, my voice shaking with suppressed emotion. "You mean someone who sacrificed everything for family, Someone who worked multiple jobs to keep children fed and housed. Someone who gave up her dreams so others could achieve theirs. Oh, please, Brianna interjected, rolling her eyes. Stop playing the martyr, Naomi. You made choices. Bad ones, apparently, since look where they got you. 40, alone, abandoned by the very people you claim to have saved. Maybe they saw something in you that we're all starting to see. That you're toxic, that you bring bad luck to everyone around you. The word toxic hung in the air like poison gas, choking me. Toxic, I repeated, standing up so suddenly my chair scraped against the floor. I'm toxic because I love too much, because I gave too freely, because I put family first. My voice was rising, but I couldn't stop it. You all stood by and watched me struggle for years. Not one of you offered to help when I was working myself to death. Not one of you said, let me take the kids for a weekend so you can rest. Or, here's some money for groceries, or even just, you're doing a good job. And now you have the audacity to call me toxic? Maybe that's exactly why you're alone, someone said from the other end of the table. I couldn't see who through my tears. You're always the victim, always the sacrifice. Men don't want that. Family doesn't want that. Nobody wants to be around someone who makes them feel guilty just by existing. I left then, walking out without saying goodbye, without looking back. I could hear them talking about me before the door even closed, about how dramatic I was, how I proved their point by leaving, how it was no wonder Sarah and Jeremy wanted nothing to do with me. I sat in my car in the dark parking lot and sobbed until I couldn't anymore, until I was empty of tears and full of a hollow ache that seemed to expand with every breath. The next morning, I woke up to find that I had been removed from the family WhatsApp group. The message was clear. I was no longer considered family. The people who shared my blood had decided I was too much of an embarrassment, too much of a reminder of struggle and sacrifice in their world of carefully curated success. Even my childhood friends had distanced themselves over the years, tired of hearing about my responsibilities, my challenges, my single status that never seemed to change. That's when I realized I was truly alone. At 40, I had no husband, no children, no siblings who claimed me, no extended family who wanted me around. I had given everything to everyone and was left with nothing but an empty house and a heart so broken I wondered if it could still pump blood. The silence in my life was deafening, broken only by the tick of the clock on the wall, counting down the hours of another day I had to get through alone. It was in this state of complete desolation that I decided I needed to start over, to find work that would at least keep me busy enough to not think about my failures. The jobs I had been working had become unbearable. Everywhere I went, people knew my story, whispered about me, looked at me with pity or disgust or something in between. I needed anonymity, needed to be somewhere where nobody knew that I was the woman whose own siblings had abandoned her, the 40-year-old single woman who couldn't keep a man, the failure who had nothing to show for 2 decades of sacrifice. That's how I found myself applying for a cleaning position at Richardson Enterprises, a massive corporate building in downtown Houston where I knew nobody and nobody knew me. The pay wasn't great. Actually, it was barely enough to cover my basic expenses, but it was night work, which meant minimal interaction with people, and it was far enough from my neighborhood that I was unlikely to run into anyone who knew my story. The application process was simple, they didn't ask too many questions, and within a week I had the job. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. I was assigned to floors 15 through 20 executive offices that needed to be spotless by the time the important people arrived in their expensive suits and designer shoes. The first night, I stood in the supply closet looking at my reflection in the metal door, wearing a uniform that made me look exactly like what I had become, invisible, forgettable, just another person cleaning up after those more successful than me. I thought about Sarah and Jeremy, wondered if they ever thought about me, if they felt any guilt about what they had done. But I knew the answer. They had moved on, erased me from their stories, and I had to find a way to live with that erasure. The building at night was a different world. The fluorescent lights hummed a lonely tune. The elevators moved like ghosts between floors, and the silence was so complete you could hear your own heartbeat. I found a strange comfort in it, in being alone without the pretense of trying to belong somewhere. I could clean, think, exist without judgment, without anyone asking why I was single, why I was childless, why I was such a failure at the basic act of being a woman in society's eyes. It was on my third week working there that I met him, Wesley Bryant. He was another cleaner assigned to floors 21 through 25, the real executive level where the CEO and board members had their offices. The first time I saw him, he was struggling with a buffer machine in the hallway, cursing under his breath as it refused to start. He looked to be in his late 40s, with graying hair at his temples and hands that showed the wear of manual labor. There was something about the way he carried himself, tired but not defeated, worn but not broken, that made me stop and offer help. "These old machines are temperamental," I said, approaching carefully. "There's a trick to it." I showed him how to jiggle the cord just right, how to press the button while pulling the trigger simultaneously, and the machine roared to life. He looked at me with surprise and gratitude, and something else, recognition maybe of another soul just trying to make it through. "Thank you," he said, his voice warm despite the late hour. "I'm Wesley, just started last week." We shook hands, and I noticed his grip was firm but gentle, the handshake of someone who had nothing to prove. "Naomi," I replied. "Been here about 3 weeks now." We started taking our breaks together, sitting in the empty cafeteria on the 5th floor, sharing instant coffee from the vending machine that tasted terrible but was hot and kept us awake. Wesley was easy to talk to, didn't ask invasive questions, didn't judge when I mentioned I was single. He shared his own story gradually, divorced after 15 years, 2 kids who lived with their mother, working this job to pay child support and save up for something better. "People look at us and see failure," he said one night, stirring sugar into his coffee with a plastic spoon. "They see middle-aged people cleaning offices and think we must have screwed up somewhere. They don't see the sacrifices, the choices that led us here, the strength it takes to show up every night and do this work." His words resonated with me deeply. Here was someone who understood what it was like to be dismissed, to be seen as less than, to be judged for circumstances beyond your control. We developed a routine. I would finish my floors, he would finish his, and we would meet in the cafeteria for our 2 a.m. break. Sometimes we talked about deep things, our disappointments, our dreams that never materialized, the way society made us feel like failures for not fitting into neat little boxes. Other times we talked about nothing important, the TV shows we watched, the best places to get cheap groceries, funny things we had seen while cleaning the offices. Wesley never made me feel bad about being single at 40. In fact, he said something one night that stuck with me. "Some people are meant to be givers, Naomi. You gave your youth to your siblings. That's not a failure, that's a superpower. The fact that they can't see it, that's their failure, not yours." It was the first time in years someone had framed my sacrifices as strength rather than stupidity. One night, about 2 months into our friendship, I was having a particularly bad day. It was Sarah's birthday, and despite everything, I had sent her a text wishing her well. She had read it. I could see the read receipt, but hadn't replied. The silence was like a knife twisting in my chest. Wesley found me crying in the supply closet on the 18th floor, my face buried in a roll of paper towels. Hey, he said gently, not trying to touch me, just being present. "What's going on?" I told him everything then, but about my siblings, their rejection, the way my entire family had turned their backs on me. I expected him to offer hollow platitudes or worse, to agree with them that I had brought it on myself. Instead, he got angry, really angry. "They took your youth, your opportunities, your everything, and then threw you away when you were no longer useful?" His face was red with indignation. "That's not family, Naomi, that's exploitation. You deserve so much better than that." His anger on my behalf was validating in a way I hadn't expected. Someone was finally seeing my pain not as self-pity, but as legitimate hurt. "The world is cruel to women like you. he continued, his voice softer now. Women who give everything and ask for nothing in return. They take and take until there's nothing left, then blame you for being empty. But you're not empty, Naomi. You're just surrounded by people too blind to see your worth. As our friendship deepened, Wesley started helping me see myself differently. He pointed out my strengths, how I always knew how to fix the equipment when it broke, how I could make even the dirtiest office sparkle, how I remembered everyone's birthdays and brought in homemade cookies even though I barely had money for ingredients. You have a gift for caring, he said. Just because some people abuse that gift doesn't make it less valuable. One night I asked Wesley why he didn't come to work sometimes. He had missed several shifts, always with an excuse that our supervisor seemed to accept without question. I have another commitment, he said vaguely. Something I've been working on for a long time. Can't really talk about it yet, but hopefully soon. I didn't push. Everyone had their secrets, their side hustles, their attempts to escape the cycle of poverty that kept us cleaning other people's successes. He asked me about my dreams, what I had wanted to do before life got in the way. It felt strange to even think about it, like trying to remember a different person's memories. I used to sew, I told him one night. My mother taught me when I was young. I would make clothes for Sarah and Jeremy when we couldn't afford to buy new ones. I got pretty good at it, could look at an expensive dress in a store window and recreate it with cheap fabric from the discount store. Why did you stop? He asked, genuinely curious. I thought about it, realizing I couldn't pinpoint exactly when I had put away my sewing machine, when I had stopped creating and started just surviving. I guess I just ran out of time, ran out of energy, ran out of reasons to make beautiful things when life was so ugly. It's never too late to start again, Wesley said, but I laughed bitterly. I'm 40 years old, Wesley. My hands shake from all the chemical cleaners I've used. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Who's going to want clothes made by a washed-up cleaning lady? He looked at me with something fierce in his eyes. You're not washed up, Naomi. You're weathered. There's a difference. Weathered things have character, have stories. That's what makes them valuable. Our conversations became the highlight of my nights, the one thing I looked forward to in my monotonous existence. Wesley had a way of making me laugh even when I felt like crying, of finding absurdity in our situation that made it bearable. He would do impressions of the executives whose offices we cleaned, making up ridiculous conversations they might have had based on the things left on their desks. He brought me tea when I had a cold, covered my floors when I needed to leave early for a doctor's appointment, never asking for anything in return. 5 months into our friendship, something changed in the building. There was excitement in the air, even at night. The security guards were gossiping. The other cleaning staff were whispering. The company was expanding, bringing in new executives, restructuring departments. It meant more work for us, more offices to clean, more trash to empty, more surfaces to disinfect, but also more opportunities for overtime, which I desperately needed. Wesley and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm by then. He would sometimes bring me tea he made at home, properly brewed in a thermos, not the terrible instant stuff from the vending machines. I would bring him cookies when I had enough ingredients to bake, which wasn't often, but he always acted like they were treasures from a 5-star bakery. You could sell these, he would say, and I would laugh because who would buy cookies from a 40-year-old cleaning lady? But he was serious. I mean it, Naomi, you have talents you're not using, skills that are lying dormant. Our conversations had grown deeper over the months. Wesley told me about his children, how much he missed them, how his ex-wife had poisoned them against him during the divorce. She told him I was a failure, he said one night, his voice heavy with pain, that I couldn't provide for them the way her new husband could. And maybe she's right. What kind of father cleans offices at night instead of attending their school plays and baseball games? I reminded him that providing for children wasn't just about money. It was about love, about sacrifice, about showing up even when life was hard. You're still their father, I told him. That will never change no matter what anyone says. He asked me more about my sewing, seemed genuinely interested in the techniques I had learned, the things I had created. I told him about the dress I had made for Sarah's high school graduation, how I had stayed up for 3 nights straight to finish it because she had seen something similar in a magazine and fallen in love with it. She looked beautiful in it, I remembered, my voice soft with the memory. Like a princess, like everything I wanted her to be. Wesley asked if she still had the dress, and I had to admit I didn't know. Probably not. It would be a reminder of where she came from, and she had made it clear she wanted no such reminders. One night, Wesley surprised me by bringing in a small sewing kit he had found at a thrift store. I thought maybe you could use it, he said, almost shy. Maybe start small, just fixing things here and there. Get your hands back into it. I was touched beyond words. It had been so long since someone had thought of me, had seen me as someone with potential rather than just problems. I took the kid home and spent the weekend altering some of my old clothes, taking them in where I had lost weight from stress, adding small embellishments that made them look less worn. It wasn't much, but it was something, a tiny spark of the creativity I had thought was dead forever. The building management announced that Richardson Enterprises was about to undergo a major expansion. They were acquiring another company, bringing in new talent, restructuring entire departments. For us cleaning staff, it meant uncertainty. Would they keep us all on? Would they bring in a new cleaning company? Wesley seemed less worried than the rest of us. These things usually work out, he said with a confidence I didn't understand. The people who work hard, who show up, who do their jobs well, they are always needed. I wanted to believe him, but life had taught me that being needed and being kept were two very different things. It was a Thursday night, exactly 5 months and 12 days after I had started working at Richardson Enterprises. I remember because I had just gotten paid and was calculating whether I could afford to buy fabric to make myself a new blouse, something that didn't look like it came from a decade ago. I was on the 19th floor working my way through the cubicles when I heard voices coming from the elevator area. It was late, even for executives who sometimes worked unusual hours, so I was curious. The elevator dinged, and I heard laughter. Male laughter that sent a chill down my spine before I even knew why. Something about it was familiar in the worst way, like hearing a song that reminds you of a terrible moment in your life. I kept cleaning, telling myself it was nothing, just executives leaving after a late meeting. But the laughter got closer, and then I heard the voice that had haunted my worst memories for years. "This place is perfect," the voice said. "Exactly the kind of opportunity I've been looking for." I froze, my hand gripping the cleaning spray so tightly my knuckles went white. It couldn't be. The universe couldn't be that cruel. But as the footsteps got closer, I knew with a sinking certainty that it was him. Marcus Hughes, my ex-boyfriend. The man who had used me, cheated on me, and contributed to my reputation as the woman too pathetic to keep a man. I tried to move, to hide, to become invisible, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. I stood there like a deer in headlights as Marcus rounded the corner with someone from Human Resources, probably giving him a late-night tour of his new kingdom. He was dressed impeccably, an expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months, Italian leather shoes that clicked authoritatively on the floor, a watch that caught the fluorescent lights and threw tiny rainbows on the walls. Success had wrapped itself around him like armor, and he wore it with the confidence of someone who had never doubted they deserved it. He was mid-sentence when he saw me, and for a moment, just a split second, I saw surprise flash across his face. Then it was replaced by something else, amusement, satisfaction, the look of someone who has just been handed a gift they didn't know they wanted. "Well, well, well, Syed," he said, stopping in his tracks, forcing the HR person to stop too. "Naomi Parker." The way he said my name made it sound like something dirty, something to be ashamed of. I straightened my spine, tried to find some dignity in my uniform and cleaning supplies. "Marcus," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The HR person looked between us, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding it. You two know each other? They asked. Marcus smiled, that same predatory smile I remembered from when he would ask for money, knowing I would give it to him even though I couldn't afford it. Oh, yes, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. Naomi and I go way back, don't we, Naomi? The way he said it, the implication in his tone, made it sound like something it wasn't. Like we had some sordid history instead of him simply being a parasite who had drained me financially and emotionally. We knew each other years ago, I said quietly, hoping that would end it, that he would move on, that this nightmare would pass quickly. But Marcus had never been one to let an opportunity for cruelty pass by. Naomi here was quite devoted to me once, he told the HR person who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Weren't you, Naomi? Still single, I see. Still cleaning. The pause before cleaning was deliberate, loaded with judgment and disdain. The HR person cleared their throat. We should continue the tour, Mr. Hughes. It's getting late. But Marcus wasn't done. What are the odds? He said, laughing that terrible laugh. Here I am, starting as vice president of sales, and here you are cleaning the offices. It's almost poetic, isn't it? Some people rise to the top and others, well, they know their place. I felt tears threatening to fall, but I refused to give him the satisfaction. I should get back to work, I said, turning away. Oh, please do, Marcus called after me. I'd hate for you to get in trouble on my account. Though I suppose when I start on Monday, I'll be seeing a lot more of you. My office will need to be spotless, of course. I'm very particular about cleanliness. The HR person finally managed to steer him away, but I could hear him still talking, still laughing, as they walked toward the elevators. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down on the floor, right there in the middle of the cubicle maze. My past had just collided with my present in the worst possible way, and I knew, with a certainty that made me sick to my stomach, that Marcus was going to make my already difficult life unbearable. I thought about calling Wesley, but it was his night off, and I didn't want to burden him with my problems. I thought about quitting right then and there, just leaving my supplies and walking out, never coming back. But I needed this job. I needed the money. I couldn't afford pride or dignity or even basic self-preservation. So, I finished my shift, moving like a ghost through the floors, praying I wouldn't run into Marcus again. When I finally made it to my car at 6 a.m, I sat there and cried until I couldn't see through my tears. Marcus Hughes, the man who had taken my money, my trust, and my faith in love, was now going to be my superior in the most literal sense. He would work in the offices I cleaned. He would have power over whether I kept my job. He would be there every night, a reminder of my failures, my poor judgment, my inability to be the kind of woman men wanted to marry instead of use. I drove home in a daze, nearly missing my exit because my mind was spinning with the implications of what had just happened. Marcus knew my history, knew my weaknesses, knew exactly how to hurt me. And now he had the perfect opportunity to do so, with the added bonus of an audience and the power structure of the workplace to protect him. Who would believe me if I complained? Who would take the side of a middle-aged cleaning lady over a vice president of sales? As I pulled into my driveway, I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Bracken Peterson, getting her morning paper. She looked at me with that familiar expression of pity and judgment, and I realized that soon everyone would know. Marcus would make sure of it. He would tell anyone who would listen about the pathetic woman who had thrown money at him, who couldn't keep a man who was now cleaning his office. My humiliation would be complete, public, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I went inside, took off my uniform, and stood in the shower until the hot water ran out. But no amount of water could wash away the feeling of dread that had settled over me like a shroud. Monday was coming, and with it, a new chapter in my story of survival. Only this time I wasn't sure I was strong enough to survive it. Marcus had broken me once before. Now he had the opportunity to finish the job, and we both knew he would take it. That night, unable to sleep, I pulled out the sewing kit Wesley had given me. I held it in my hands, thinking about his faith in me. his belief that I had talents worth nurturing. But what was the point? What was the point of having talents when life seemed determined to keep me in my place, on my knees, cleaning up after people who saw me as less than human? I put the kid away and lay in the dark, waiting for Monday to come, waiting for the next phase of my humiliation to begin. Monday came with the inevitability of a storm that had been building on the horizon. I arrived at work that night to find the entire atmosphere of the building had changed. Word had spread about the new vice president of sales, and everyone was buzzing with speculation about what changes he would bring. If only they knew that the only change Marcus Hughes was interested in was making my life a living nightmare. He had left his office in a deliberate state of chaos that first official night. Papers scattered everywhere, coffee stains on the carpet that looked suspiciously fresh, trash overflowing from the bin despite it being his first day. There was even a note on his desk positioned where I couldn't miss it. Make sure this place is spotless, Naomi. I have important meetings tomorrow and I can't have potential clients thinking we employ substandard cleaning staff. The word substandard was underlined 3 times. I cleaned his office with shaking hands, remembering how he used to leave our apartment in similar disarray when we were together, knowing I would clean it because I couldn't stand the mess. Some patterns never change. They just find new stages to play out on. As I worked, I found myself thinking about Wesley, wondering where he was, why he had abandoned me just when Marcus had reappeared in my life like a recurring nightmare. The second night was worse. Marcus had apparently told his entire department about me during their team meeting. I know because when I entered the sales floor to clean, conversation stopped mid-sentence. Then the whispers started following me from cubicle to cubicle like a toxic cloud. That's her, I heard someone say. The one who couldn't keep a man, 40 and still single. Marcus said she used to throw money at him just to keep him around. The laughter that followed was cruel, pointed, designed to hurt. By the end of the week, I had become a legend in the building, but not the good kind. I was the cautionary tale mothers told their daughters. Don't end up like the cleaning lady, desperate and alone, scrubbing toilets for people half your age who had made better choices. The security guard who used to chat with me now barely made eye contact. The other cleaning staff kept their distance, afraid my bad luck might be contagious. Even the vending machine seemed to mock me, eating my dollar bills without dispensing anything in return. Marcus escalated his torment with the precision of someone who had made a study of cruelty. He would time his late nights to coincide with my cleaning schedule, always appearing just when I thought I was alone. Working hard or hardly working, he would say, that same tired joke that wasn't funny the first time. He would stand too close, forcing me to smell his expensive cologne, reminding me of the cheap body spray he used to douse himself in when we were together, back when I was foolish enough to think he loved me. One night, he brought a group of executives to show them something in his office while I was cleaning the conference room next door. I heard my name through the thin walls, heard him telling them about our past. But his version was so twisted it was unrecognizable. In his telling, I was the one who had pursued him relentlessly, who had tried to trap him with money and gifts, who had become so possessive that he had no choice but to end things. She still can't let go, he said, loud enough for me to hear. That's why she took this job, to be near me. It's actually kind of sad. The humiliation was so complete, so overwhelming, that I found myself hiding in the supply closet, sitting on an upturned bucket, trying to remember how to breathe. That's where Wesley found me when he finally returned after a week's absence. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down on the floor beside me, his presence solid and comforting in a world that felt like it was spinning out of control. I heard what's been happening, he said quietly. The whole building's talking about it. Marcus Hughes is a special kind of evil, isn't he? I laughed bitterly through my tears. He's destroying me, Wesley, again, and this time I don't even have the strength to fight back. I'm 40 years old, cleaning offices, being humiliated by my ex-boyfriend who's now my boss. How did my life become this pathetic? Wesley was quiet for a long moment, then said something that surprised me. Your life isn't pathetic, Naomi. You're just surrounded by pathetic people who need to tear others down to feel big. Marcus Hughes is a small man in an expensive suit, nothing more, and his day is coming. There was something in his voice, a certainty that seemed out of place coming from another cleaner, but I was too exhausted to question it. I need to quit, I said, the words feeling like defeat in my mouth. I can't do this anymore. I can't come here every night and be reminded of every failure, every bad choice, every reason why I'm alone. Wesley turned to face me fully then, and in the dim light of the supply closet, his eyes seemed to burn with an intensity I'd never seen before. Don't quit, he said firmly. Not yet. Give it 2 more weeks. Can you do that for me? 2 weeks, and I promise you, things will change. I wanted to ask him how he could possibly make that promise. What power did a middle-aged cleaner have to change anything? But something in his expression stopped me. There was knowledge there, secrets, plans I wasn't privy to. Why 2 weeks? I asked instead. He smiled, but it wasn't entirely reassuring. Because sometimes justice takes time to prepare. And sometimes the people who seem powerless are actually the ones holding all the cards. Trust me, Naomi. Have I ever led you wrong? He hadn't, I realized. In all our months of friendship, Wesley had never given me bad advice, never broken a promise, never been anything but supportive and kind. So I agreed to 2 more weeks, though each night felt like walking through hell in a uniform and sensible shoes. Marcus's harassment became more creative, more public. He started leaving performance reviews on my cart, critiquing my cleaning with the same red pen he probably used to mark up sales reports. Missed spot on window. Trash can not properly aligned. Failed to achieve shine standard on floor tiles. Each note was signed with his initials, like they were official documents. The breaking point came on a Thursday night, 10 days into my promised 2 weeks. Marcus had called a late meeting in the main conference room, keeping his entire team there until well past midnight. When they finally left, the room was a disaster. Food containers everywhere, spilled drinks on the carpet, whiteboards covered in crude drawings that were clearly meant to represent me. And in the center of the table, written in red marker on a piece of poster board, Naomi Parker, 40, single. Pathetic. I stood in the doorway of that conference room looking at the scene before me, and something inside me finally snapped. Not in anger, but in complete, absolute defeat. This was my life. This was what I had become. The woman who sacrificed everything and ended up as entertainment for cruel men in suits. I sat down right there in the doorway and started writing my resignation letter on a piece of paper from my cleaning cart. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I assumed it was security doing rounds, but when I looked up, it was Wesley. He took in the scene. The destroyed conference room, the sign with my name, me sitting on the floor with tears streaming down my face, and his expression went through several changes. Shock, rage, and then something cold and calculating that seemed out of place on the face of a janitor. Come with me, he said, helping me to my feet. Right now. Leave your cart. Leave everything. Just come. There was command in his voice that I'd never heard before. Authority that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than our friendship. I followed him, too exhausted to resist, as he led me through the building to the executive elevator, the one cleaning staff were never supposed to use. He pulled out a key card I didn't know he had and pressed the button for the 25th floor. Wesley, we can't go up there, I said, panic cutting through my despair. That's the CEO's floor. We'll get fired. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Naomi, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago. The elevator opened directly into the most luxurious office suite I had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Houston's skyline that took my breath away. The furniture was all dark wood and leather, the kind that whispered money rather than shouting it. and on the desk in a silver frame was a picture I recognized. It was Wesley with 2 children, but they were in front of a mansion, not the modest apartment he had described. "Wesley?" I said, my voice small and confused. "What is this? Whose office is this?" He walked to the desk, sat down in the chair behind it, like he belonged there, like he had always belonged there. "It's mine," he said simply. "I'm not Wesley the cleaner, Naomi. I'm Wesley Bryant, CEO of Richardson Enterprises. I own this building. I own this company. And Marcus Hughes, he works for me." The world tilted on its axis. Nothing made sense. But you're a cleaner. We clean toilets together. We drink terrible coffee from vending machines. You told me about your divorce, your child support payments. My voice trailed off as I saw the truth in his eyes. It had all been real, but not the way I thought. "I do clean," he said. "Started doing it after my divorce when I couldn't sleep, when the offices were empty and I needed something to do with my hands that didn't involve destroying companies or making million-dollar deals. It became my therapy, my way of staying grounded. The night shift supervisor knows who I am, lets me come and go as I please. I was going to stop, but then I met you. You lied to me," I said, but there was no heat in it, just exhaustion and confusion. "All these months, you let me think you were like me, that we were in the same situation." He stood up, walked around the desk, but didn't try to touch me. "I didn't lie exactly. Everything I told you about my life was true. The divorce, the kids who won't talk to me, the loneliness, I just omitted some details." "Some details?" I laughed, but it was hollow. "Being a billionaire CEO is not some details, Wesley. That's your entire life. Why? Why pretend? Was I just entertainment for you too? The poor cleaning lady you could play with, make feel special, then reveal it was all a game?" "No." The vehemence in his voice startled me. "Never that. Naomi, you're the first real friend I've had in years. The first person who saw me as just Wesley, not Wesley Bryant with his fortune and his companies and his power. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? Every relationship in my life is transactional. Everyone wants something, except you. You just wanted to share bad coffee and talk about life." I sank into one of the leather chairs, my mind trying to process this revelation. "So what now? You fire Marcus? You can't do that just because he's mean to me. That would be..." I paused, not sure what it would be. An abuse of power? But wasn't what Marcus was doing also an abuse of power? Wesley's expression darkened. "I'm not going to fire Marcus Hughes for being mean to you, though that alone would be enough in my book. I'm going to fire him for embezzlement, fraud, and corporate espionage." He pulled out a folder from his desk, thick with documents. "I've been investigating some irregularities in our accounts. Money disappearing, stocks being transferred without authorization, sensitive information being sold to competitors." He spread the documents on the desk, and even with my limited understanding of corporate finance, I could see Marcus's name appearing again and again. He's been stealing from the company since his second day. He thinks he's clever, using skills he learned at his last job, the one he was quietly fired from for similar reasons, though they couldn't prove it. But I can prove it. I have everything I need right here. "You knew?" I asked. "You knew he was stealing and you let him continue?" Wesley's smile was sharp. I wanted to see how far he would go, how much rope he would need to hang himself. Also, I wanted to understand his patterns, make sure I could recover everything he took and identify any accomplices. But mostly, his voice softened. I wanted him to reveal his true character publicly, so that when he falls, everyone knows exactly who he really is. "This is about me, Barsetti," I said, understanding dawning. "You're doing this because of how he treated me." Wesley nodded. "Partly, but also because men like Marcus Hughes are a cancer in the corporate world. They charm their way in, take what they want, destroy good people, and move on to the next target. It ends here." Over the next hour, Wesley showed me everything. The trail of stolen funds, the forged signatures, the unauthorized stock transfers that Marcus had assigned to himself. It was systematic theft on a scale that took my breath away. He's stolen almost $2 million in just 3 weeks, Wesley said. He probably thought our accounting systems were outdated, that no one would notice until he was long gone with his profits. He didn't count on the CEO personally reviewing every transaction because he couldn't sleep at night. When will you expose him? I asked, still struggling to reconcile the Wesley I knew with this powerful businessman who held Marcus's fate in his hands. Tomorrow, Wesley said. There's a board meeting at 9 a.m. Marcus will be there presenting his first monthly report. He's expecting praise, maybe even a bonus for his supposed early success. Instead, he'll be met with FBI agents. I've already turned over all evidence to them. FBI, I echoed weakly. This is a federal crime, Naomi. He crossed state lines with his theft, used wire fraud, violated about a dozen different federal statutes. He's looking at 20 years minimum. The thought of Marcus in prison should have made me happy, but mostly I just felt empty, drained of all emotion. Wesley must have sensed my state because he gently guided me to the couch by the window. There's more, he said, sitting beside me. I need to tell you the rest. I wasn't sure I could handle more revelations, but I nodded for him to continue. The fashion school I mentioned you could open? I want to make that happen. Not as charity, but as a business investment. I've seen your work, Naomi, the clothes you've altered, the designs you've sketched on napkins during our breaks. You have real talent. I want to fund a fashion academy with you as the director. Real funding, not just enough to get by, but enough to create something special. I stared at him, unable to process this offer on top of everything else. Why? Was all I could manage. Because you deserve it, he said simply. Because talent like yours shouldn't be hidden away, shouldn't be crushed under the weight of other people's cruelty and indifference. Because I've watched you these past months, seen your strength, your kindness, your resilience, and I've fallen in love with you. The last words hung in the air between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I could cross. You don't know me, I said weakly. Not really. You know the cleaning lady version of me, not the real me. Wesley laughed, but it was gentle. Naomi, the cleaning lady version of you is the real you. The woman who shows up every night despite being in pain, who brings cookies she can barely afford to make just to brighten someone's day, who talks about her siblings with love even after they betrayed her. That's who you really are. I'm 40 years old, I said, as if that explained everything. And single, and poor, and broken. I'm everything society says is worthless in a woman. Wesley took my hand then. The first time he had really touched me beyond casual contact. You're 40 and experienced, you're single and free, you're poor in money but rich in character, you're not broken, you're tested. And to me, you're worth more than every person in this building combined. I wanted to believe him, wanted to accept this fairy tale he was offering. But life had taught me that fairy tales were for other people, younger people, people who hadn't made the mistakes I had. What about your ex-wife, your kids, your world? I don't fit into it, Wesley. I'm the cleaning lady. That's what everyone will see. Let them see what they want, he said firmly. I've spent years caring about appearances, about what society expects, about maintaining an image. It cost me my marriage, my relationship with my children, my peace of mind. I'm done with that. I want something real, someone real. I want you. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He looked at it and his expression hardened. The FBI is ready to move. They'll be here first thing in the morning. He looked at me, and there was something fierce in his eyes. I want you there when it happens. Not as the cleaning lady, but as my guest, as someone important to me. Will you come? I thought about Marcus's face when he realized his schemes had been discovered when he saw me standing next to the CEO he had been stealing from. It wasn't revenge I wanted exactly, but justice, vindication, proof that treating people like dirt had consequences. Yes, I said, I'll be there. Wesley smiled, and for the first time since Marcus had reappeared in my life, I felt something other than despair. There's one more thing, he said, and his voice had a different quality now, softer, more uncertain. The fashion school is a business offer, separate from anything personal between us. But personally, Naomi, would you consider having dinner with me? A real dinner, not vending machine food in an empty cafeteria. Let me court you properly the way you should have been courted all along. I looked at this man who had been my friend, who had seen me at my lowest and still somehow saw value in me. You're my boss, I said, but I was smiling slightly. Actually, technically, I'm not. I'm not on the cleaning staff payroll. I've just been volunteering extensively. The absurdity of it made me laugh, really laugh for the first time in weeks. Ask me again after tomorrow, I said. After Marcus is gone, after the dust settles, after I've had time to process all of this. Ask me again when I can think clearly. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'll wait, he said. I've been waiting all my life for someone like you, Naomi. I can wait a little longer. He drove me home that night in a car that probably cost more than my house, but he didn't make a big deal about it. At my door, he handed me a business card. This has my real number, he said. Call me if you need anything before tomorrow. And Naomi, wear something nice tomorrow. Not for them, not for Marcus, but for you. Show them who you really are. I spent the rest of the night alternating between panic and disbelief. Wesley Bryant, billionaire CEO, was in love with me. He wanted to fund my fashion school. Marcus was going to be arrested. My life, which had been circling the drain just hours ago, had suddenly taken a turn so sharp I had whiplash. I pulled out my sewing machine, the one I hadn't touched in years, and started working on a dress I had designed in my mind during those long nights of cleaning. By morning, I had created something I was proud of, a dress that was professional but with unique touches that showed creativity, skill, personality. It wasn't designer, but it was mine, made with my hands, my vision, my refusal to give up even when life had given me every reason to. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not the cleaning lady, not the rejected sister, not the woman who couldn't keep a man, but Naomi Parker, survivor and creator. The board meeting was scheduled for 9, but Wesley had asked me to come at 8:30. I arrived at Richardson Enterprises feeling like I was walking into a different building entirely. The security guard who had been avoiding me did a double take when he saw me, clearly confused by my transformation. I held my head high and walked to the executive elevator using the pass Wesley had given me. The boardroom was already filling with executives when I arrived. Wesley was at the head of the table looking every inch the powerful CEO in his perfectly tailored suit. When he saw me, his face lit up with a smile that made my heart skip. Naomi, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Thank you for joining us. Please, sit here. He indicated the chair directly to his right, a position of honor that didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the room. Marcus arrived 15 minutes later, carrying a presentation folder and wearing his most expensive suit. He was practically strutting, clearly expecting this to be his moment of triumph. When he saw me sitting next to Wesley, his steps faltered. What is she doing here? He asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. The cleaning staff shouldn't be in board meetings. Ms. Parker is here as my personal guest, Wesley said coolly, and as a key witness to certain events that will be discussed today. Marcus's face went through several expressions, confusion, anger, and then the beginning of fear. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't quite figure out what. Before we begin your presentation, Mr. Hughes, Wesley continued, there are some discrepancies in our accounts that need to be addressed. He pulled out the folder of evidence, laying it open on the table. $2 million missing, unauthorized stock transfers. Corporate information sold to our competitors. Would you care to explain? Marcus went pale, then red, then pale again. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. This is obviously a mistake. Or someone is trying to frame me. Probably her, he pointed at me, desperation making him reckless. She's obsessed with me, has been for years. She probably did this to get back at me for breaking up with her. The boardroom door opened then, and 2 FBI agents walked in, their badges visible, their expression serious. "Marcus Hughes," one of them said, "you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and corporate espionage. You have the right to remain silent." As they read him his rights, Marcus's bravado crumbled completely. He started babbling, trying to blame everyone else, trying to make deals, trying to maintain that it was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me with such hatred that I actually flinched. "This is your fault," he hissed as he passed. "You always were bad luck. No wonder your siblings abandoned you." The words stung, but Wesley stood up, placing himself between Marcus and me. "The only bad luck here," he said, his voice carrying throughout the boardroom, "is that you thought you could abuse good people without consequences. Enjoy prison, Mr. Hughes. I hear they appreciate bullies there." After Marcus was gone, Wesley addressed the board, explaining the situation, the investigation, the steps being taken to recover the stolen funds. Then he did something that shocked everyone, including me. "I also want to announce a new initiative," he said. "Richardson Enterprises will be funding a fashion and design academy, headed by Ms. Naomi Parker. We've been looking to diversify our portfolio, and I believe investing in creative education and talent development is the future." The board members looked stunned, but no one questioned him. When you're a billionaire CEO who just saved the company from a major theft, people tend to trust your judgment. The meeting concluded with Wesley assigning teams to handle the fallout from Marcus's arrest and to begin preliminary work on the Fashion Academy project. As everyone filed out, whispering among themselves, Wesley and I were left alone in the boardroom. "Thank you," I said, though the words felt inadequate. "For everything, for seeing Marcus for who he was, for stopping him, for seeing me." Wesley moved closer, and for the first time I didn't step back. "I have a proposition for you," he said, and despite everything that had happened, there was uncertainty in his voice. "Actually, several propositions, and you're free to accept or reject any of them independently." He walked to the window, looking out at the Houston skyline, gathering his thoughts. "First, the Fashion Academy. I want to fund it properly, not just a small operation, but something that can really make a difference. A place where people who have talent, but not opportunity, can learn, create, build careers. I want you to run it, to shape it into something that reflects your values, your vision. The salary would be substantial, and you'd never have to clean another office unless you wanted to." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. A year ago, I was on my knees scrubbing toilets, being mocked by my family, abandoned by my siblings. Now a billionaire was offering me my dreams on a silver platter. "Why?" I asked again, because I still couldn't quite believe this was real. Wesley turned to face me. "Because I've spent the last 20 years building companies, making money, acquiring things. But I haven't built anything that matters, anything that changes lives for the better. Watching you these past months, seeing how you've survived everything life has thrown at you with your dignity intact, your kindness undimmed, it's made me want to be better, to do better." "That's the business proposition," he continued. "The personal one is this: let me take you to dinner, not as employer and employee, not as CEO and cleaning lady, but as Wesley and Naomi, two people who've been broken by life but are still standing. Let me show you that not all men are Marcus Hughes, that some of us actually see your worth and want to cherish it, not exploit it." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He looked at it, frowned, then answered. His expression grew darker as he listened. "I see," he said finally. "Yes, do what you need to do. I'll handle things here." He hung up and looked at me with a mixture of anger and concern. That was the FBI. They'd been going through Marcus's phone and computer. "He's been in contact with someone about you, Naomi. Several people, actually. He reached out to your siblings. My blood ran cold. Sarah and Jeremy? Why would he contact them? Wesley's jaw tightened. He was trying to dig up dirt on you, anything he could use to humiliate you further. He offered them money for embarrassing stories, photographs, anything that would make you look bad. I felt sick. Even though my siblings had rejected me, the thought of them conspiring with Marcus to hurt me was almost too much to bear. Did they? I couldn't finish the question, but Wesley understood. Sarah sent him photos from when you were younger, apparently. Pictures where you looked tired, overwhelmed, struggling. She also confirmed his stories about you being desperate and needy. Jeremy asked for more money before he would share information. I laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. Of course they did. Even my humiliation has a price tag for them. Wesley moved closer, his presence comforting without being overwhelming. There's more. The FBI found evidence that Marcus was planning something bigger. He wasn't just stealing money, he was setting you up to take the fall for it. What? I stood up so fast the chair rolled backward. He was going to frame me? Wesley nodded grimly. He had created a trail of evidence suggesting you had access to areas you shouldn't have, that you were using your position to steal information and money. If I hadn't been investigating him, if we hadn't caught him first, you would have been arrested instead of him. The magnitude of Marcus's evil hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't enough to humiliate me, to make my work life miserable. He wanted to destroy me completely, to send me to prison for his crimes. Why does he hate me so much? I asked, sinking back into the chair. What did I ever do to him except love him? Men like Marcus hate anyone who makes them feel small, Wesley said. Your genuine love, your sacrifice, your authenticity, it all reminded him of what he lacks. He's empty inside, Naomi, and seeing someone full of love and dedication despite having so much less than him, it enraged him. You're everything he's not, and he couldn't stand it. We sat in silence for a moment, processing everything. Then Wesley spoke again, his voice gentle. The FBI wants to know if you want to press additional charges. Harassment, defamation, conspiracy to frame you for federal crimes. It would mean testifying, reliving some painful memories, but it would also mean he faces additional years in prison. I thought about it, about the satisfaction of seeing Marcus pay for everything he'd done. But I also thought about moving forward, about not letting him take any more of my time and energy. I need to think about it, I said finally. Can I let them know tomorrow? Of course, Wesley said. Take all the time you need. And Naomi, whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to pursue charges, I'll make sure you have the best lawyers. If you want to let it go and move on, I'll respect that too. His phone buzzed again. He looked at it and smiled slightly. The news is already spreading. 3 different business news outlets want statements about Marcus's arrest. By tomorrow, everyone will know what he really is. His reputation, the one thing he valued above everything else, is destroyed. There was poetic justice in that. Marcus had tried to destroy my reputation, such as it was, and ended up destroying his own. What about the money he stole, I asked. Can you recover it? Most of it, Wesley said. He wasn't as clever as he thought. The FBI has already frozen his accounts, and we'll get back probably 90% of what he took. The rest, consider it a small price to pay for revealing his true nature and getting him out of our lives. Our lives, I repeated, noting the plural. Wesley had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I'm being presumptuous, he said, but I hope maybe if you're willing, it could be our lives. Together, eventually, if you want. The vulnerability in his voice, so different from his CEO persona, touched something deep inside me. This man, this billionaire who could have anyone, was nervously asking me, a 40-year-old cleaning lady, to consider a future with him. You don't really know me, I said softly. You know the surface, but there's so much more, so much damage, so much baggage. Then let me learn, he said simply. Let me discover all of it, the good and the bad, the damage and the healing. I'm not some young man looking for a trophy wife, Naomi. I'm 48 years old, divorced, estranged from my children, and so lonely I spend my nights cleaning offices just to feel connected to something real. I don't want perfect. I want genuine. My phone rang then, disrupting the moment. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer it. Hello? The voice on the other end made my stomach drop. It was Sarah. Naomi, she said, and she sounded different, smaller, uncertain. I heard about what happened, about Marcus. The FBI contacted me. I put the phone on speaker, not having the energy to hide this from Wesley. What do you want, Sarah? I asked, exhaustion coloring my voice. I'm sorry for what I told him, for the pictures I sent. I didn't know he was planning to hurt you like that. I thought it was just, I don't know what I thought. She paused, and I could hear her struggling with the words. I've been horrible to you. Jeremy, too. We need to talk. Now you want to talk? I laughed bitterly. After you threw me out of your life like garbage? After you told me I was an embarrassment? After you sold information about me to my abuser for what, Sarah? How much was my humiliation worth to you? $5,000, she whispered, and the shame in her voice was palpable. He offered me $5,000 for photos and information about you, and I took it. I took it because I'm broke, Naomi. My company went under 3 months ago. I've been pretending everything is fine, but I'm about to lose my apartment. I'm about to lose everything. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sarah, who had rejected me for being poor, was now poor herself. Sarah, who had been embarrassed by my struggles, was now struggling. And you thought selling me out to Marcus was the solution? I was desperate, she said, crying now, and angry and stupid. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'll testify against him if you need me to. I'll tell them everything about what he asked for, what he was planning. Wesley raised an eyebrow at me, asking silently if I wanted him to leave. I shook my head. He had been part of this journey. He could hear how it played out. What about Jeremy? I asked. Is he broke too? His startup failed, Sarah admitted. He's been living in his car for 2 weeks. He's too proud to tell anyone, but I saw him at a rest stop, sleeping in the driver's seat. We're both exactly where we said we'd never be, where we mocked you for being. The old Naomi, the one who had sacrificed everything for these two, would have immediately offered to help, would have opened her arms and her wallet without question. But that Naomi had been broken too many times, had given too much and received too little in return. This Naomi, the one sitting in a boardroom next to a billionaire who saw her worth, was different. I need time, I said finally, to process this, to figure out if I can forgive you both for what you did. You didn't just reject me, Sarah. You and Jeremy made me feel worthless, like my entire life had been wasted. You took my sacrifices and threw them in my face like they meant nothing. I know, Sarah whispered. We were so focused on running from where we came from that we ran from the person who made it possible for us to run at all. Mom and Dad would be so ashamed of us. It was the first time she had mentioned our parents in years, and it hit me unexpectedly hard. I'll call you later, I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. Maybe. I don't know. I need time. I hung up before she could respond, before the sound of her crying could weaken my resolve. Wesley handed me a tissue, and I realized I was crying too. Family is complicated, he said softly. Trust me, I know. My kids haven't spoken to me in 2 years. They think I chose money over them, and maybe in some ways I did. Not intentionally, but through 1,000 small choices that added up to abandonment. He paused, looking out the window again. Do you think you'll forgive them? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to because they're all the family I have left. But another part of me is so tired of being the one who forgives, who understands, who makes excuses for everyone else's cruelty. When do I get to matter? When do my feelings count? They count now, Wesley said firmly. With me, they count. Your feelings, your needs, your dreams, they all matter. And whatever you decide about your siblings, I'll support you. If you want to help them, we'll help them. If you want to maintain distance, we'll maintain distance. This is your choice, Naomi. Your life. The possessive way he said we should have bothered me, but instead it felt comforting. After so many years of facing everything alone, the idea of having a partner, someone truly on my side, was intoxicating. You really want to do this? I asked. Date a woman with all this drama, all this baggage? I want to date you, he corrected. The drama and baggage are just part of your story, not your identity. Besides, he smiled slightly, I have my own drama. Wait until you meet my ex-wife. She makes your siblings look like angels. She's already going to hate that I'm interested in someone she'll see as beneath our social class. Great, I said dryly. Another person who'll think I'm not good enough. Wesley's expression turned serious. Anyone who thinks you're not good enough is blind, Naomi. You're worth 100 of the society women my ex-wife thinks I should date. You're real, you're strong, you're talented, and you're kind despite having every reason not to be. That makes you extraordinary. We were interrupted by a knock on the door. Wesley's assistant, a young man named Jordan, who I had cleaned up after many times, entered looking flustered. Mr. Bryant, the media is going crazy about the arrest. They want a statement, and there are reporters gathering outside. Also, he glanced at me uncertainly. Someone leaked that Ms. Parker was involved somehow. They're calling her the whistleblower. Wesley's expression darkened. I didn't blow any whistles, I said quickly. I didn't report anything. But Wesley was already thinking ahead. It doesn't matter what the truth is, he said. The media will create their own narrative. Jordan, set up a press conference for this afternoon. I want to control this story before it controls us. He turned to me. Naomi, you don't have to be part of this if you don't want to. I can handle the media alone. But I thought about all the times I had hidden, all the times I had let others tell my story, define my narrative. No, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. I want to be there. I want people to know the truth. Wesley smiled, pride evident in his eyes. Then we do it together. Jordan, make sure the conference room is ready for 2 o'clock and get our best PR team on this. I want the story to be about corporate integrity and justice, not gossip and speculation. After Jordan left, Wesley and I spent the next 2 hours preparing. He coached me on dealing with media questions, on how to present myself, on what to say and what not to say. Don't let them bait you into talking about your personal relationship with Marcus, he advised. Keep it professional. You were an employee who witnessed concerning behavior and reported it through proper channels. But I didn't report it, I reminded him. You discovered it on your own. He winked. Details. The important thing is that justice was served and the company is safe. That's the story we're telling. As 2 o'clock approached, my nerves were shot. I had never been in front of cameras, never had reporters interested in my story. Wesley sensed my anxiety and took my hand. You've faced worse than this, he said. You've survived abandonment, betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak. A few reporters with cameras? That's nothing compared to what you've already overcome. The conference room was packed. Cameras, microphones, and reporters with digital recorders and notepads. They all turned when we entered, and the flash of cameras was blinding. Wesley guided me to the podium. Standing beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. Good afternoon, Wesley began, his CEO voice commanding attention. I'm here to address the arrest of Marcus Hughes this morning and to set the record straight about the events that led to it. He outlined the embezzlement, the investigation, the FBI involvement, all in clinical, professional terms. Then he turned to me. Ms. Naomi Parker, one of our valued employees, showed tremendous courage in the face of workplace harassment from Mr. Hughes. Her strength and professionalism during a difficult situation exemplified the values we hold dear at Richardson Enterprises. She is not just a whistleblower or a victim. She is a hero who stood up to corruption and abuse. The reporters immediately started shouting questions. Miss Parker, what was your relationship with Marcus Hughes? How long was the harassment going on? Are you and Mr. Bryant romantically involved? The last question made my cheeks burn, but Wesley smoothly intercepted. We're here to discuss corporate crime and justice, not personal matters, he said firmly. Ms. Parker showed incredible courage, and we're proud to announce that she will be heading our new initiative, the Richardson Fashion and Design Academy, aimed at providing opportunities for talented individuals who might otherwise not have access to such education. That shifted the narrative, and suddenly the questions were about the academy, about my background in fashion, about the vision for the program. I found my voice talking about creating opportunity, about talent that goes undiscovered because of circumstances, about building something that could change lives the way mine was changed. By the end of the press conference, I felt different. Not like the cleaning lady who had been mocked and dismissed, but like someone with purpose, with a future, with value that others could see. The reporters were actually interested in my story, in my journey from sacrifice to success. As we left the conference room, Wesley smiled at me. You were brilliant, he said, poised, articulate, inspiring. You're a natural leader, Naomi. The academy is going to be extraordinary under your guidance. We were heading to his office when my phone rang again. This time it was Jeremy. Like Sarah, he sounded different, humbled, broken. Naomi, I saw the press conference, he said. You looked amazing, like the sister who raised us, but stronger. Can we talk, please? I looked at Wesley, who nodded encouragingly. I'm listening, I said carefully. Jeremy's voice cracked as he spoke. I'm sorry. For everything, for abandoning you, for the cruel things I said, for choosing image over family. I've lost everything, Naomi. My company, my money, my friends who were only there for the success. And I realized that the only real thing I ever had was you, and I threw it away. You said I was an embarrassment, I reminded him, the hurt still fresh despite everything that had happened. You said I was toxic, that I brought bad luck. I could hear him crying now, and despite everything, it tugged at my heart. This was still my baby brother, the boy I had sung to sleep, whose tears I had dried, whose dreams I had nurtured. I was the toxic one, he said. I was so poisoned by ambition and the need to fit in that I poisoned our relationship. I became everything I used to say I'd never be. Shallow, cruel, ungrateful. Mom and Dad would be so disappointed in me. He paused, gathering himself. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that you were right about everything. Family should mean something. Love should mean something. Sacrifice should be remembered and honored. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of decision. These were my siblings, the children I had raised, the family I had left. They had hurt me deeply, but they were also hurting now. Where are you staying? I asked finally. In my car, he admitted, behind a Walmart in Austin. It's actually the same Walmart where you used to take us for back-to-school shopping. Remember? You would save up all summer so we could get new clothes. The memory hit me hard. Those shopping trips where I would pretend I didn't need anything so they could have more. Come to Houston, I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Both of you. We need to talk in person. But Jeremy, Sarah, this isn't me immediately forgiving and forgetting. This is me giving us a chance to figure out if we can rebuild something. It might not work. I might not be able to get past the hurt. But I'm willing to try. The relief in Jeremy's voice was palpable. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for being who you are, for still having a heart after we tried to break it. After I hung up, Wesley looked at me with something like awe. You're incredible, he said. After everything they did, you're still willing to try. I don't know if it's incredible or stupid, I admitted. But they're my family, the only family I have, and maybe people can change. Maybe hitting rock bottom will teach them what I tried to teach them all those years ago. that money and status mean nothing without love and loyalty. Wesley pulled me into a hug then, the first real embrace we had shared. It felt safe, warm, like coming home after a long, cold journey. "Whatever happens with them, you're not alone anymore," he murmured against my hair. "I'm here, for whatever you need, for as long as you'll let me." I pulled back to look at him, this man who had appeared in my life as a fellow cleaner and revealed himself to be so much more. "About that dinner," I said, managing a small smile. "Is the offer still open?" His face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "Always," he said. "Tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're ready." I thought about it, about everything that had happened, about the future that was suddenly spreading before me like a road I had never imagined traveling. Tonight, I decided, after everything that's happened, after all these revelations and confrontations and life-changing moments, I just want to sit across from you at a nice restaurant and pretend we're just two normal people on a date. Wesley laughed, and it was warm and genuine. "I don't think either of us qualifies as normal," he said, "but I'll take extraordinary over normal any day." As we stood there in his office, the Houston skyline spread out before us, I realized that my life had completely transformed in a matter of hours. This morning I had been a cleaning lady being tormented by my ex-boyfriend. Now I was going to run a fashion academy. My tormentor was in FBI custody. My siblings were humbled and seeking reconciliation, and a billionaire wanted to date me. It felt surreal, like a dream I would wake up from to find myself back in my uniform, mop in hand. But Wesley's hand in mine was real, solid, warm. The offer to run the academy was real. Marcus's arrest was real. My life, after 40 years of struggle and sacrifice, was finally, truly beginning. "There's one more thing," Wesley said, his expression turning serious again. "I need to tell you something about the Fashion Academy, about why I'm so invested in it beyond just wanting to help you." He walked to his desk, pulling out a worn photograph from his wallet. It showed a young woman at a sewing machine, smiling at the camera with the same warm eyes Wesley had. "This was my mother," he said softly. "She was a seamstress, worked in a factory for 30 years, making clothes for designer brands that paid her minimum wage while selling her work for thousands. She always dreamed of having her own fashion house, of teaching other women her skills, but she passed away before she could make it happen." He looked at me with eyes that held old pain and new hope. "When I saw you that first night, fixing that buffer machine, then later when you talked about sewing, about the clothes you made for your siblings, it was like the universe was giving me a chance to honor my mother's memory through you." I took the photograph, studying the woman who had raised this complicated, wonderful man. "She's beautiful," I said, "and she raised an incredible son." Wesley smiled sadly. "She raised a son who got so caught up in making money that he forgot where he came from. But meeting you, Naomi, reminded me, you're everything she was. Hardworking, talented, sacrificial, full of love despite life's hardships. The Fashion Academy isn't just my gift to you. It's my mother's dream finally coming true." That night at dinner, at an elegant restaurant where the waiter didn't even mention prices and the napkins were actual fabric, Wesley and I talked for hours, not about Marcus or my siblings or the academy, but about dreams deferred, about roads not taken, about the people we might have been if life had been kinder. "I wanted to be a teacher," Wesley admitted. "Can you imagine? Me teaching high school history to bored teenagers? But my father said there was no money in it, no future. So I got my MBA, climbed the corporate ladder, and lost my soul somewhere along the way." "You found it again," I pointed out, gesturing to his plans for the academy. "Maybe we don't get to be who we originally wanted, but we can become something better. People who create opportunities for others to achieve their dreams." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "How did you stay so wise, Naomi? After everything you've been through, how did you not become bitter?" "Oh, I was bitter," I admitted, "for a long time. But bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. It was killing me slowly, eating away at whatever joy I had left. So I chose to let it go. Not for them, but for me. And now, I squeezed his hand. I'm glad I did. Because if I had stayed bitter, I might have missed this. Missed you. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The news of Marcus's arrest had made national headlines. VP of sales arrested for $2 million embezzlement scheme and corporate executive attempts to frame innocent employee. Marcus tried to make bail, but the judge, after hearing about his attempts to frame me and flee with the money, denied it. He was being held pending trial, facing 25 years minimum. His lawyer reached out to me through Wesley's legal team, wanting to make a deal. Marcus would return everything he had taken, including the money my siblings had been paid for information, if I agreed not to testify about the personal harassment. Absolutely not, I said when Wesley's lawyer presented the offer. He doesn't get to buy his way out of accountability. I'm testifying to everything. The harassment, the humiliation, the attempt to frame me. Let the jury hear it all. Meanwhile, the Fashion Academy was taking shape faster than I could have imagined. Wesley had purchased a building in a revitalizing part of Houston, a former department store that would be converted into state-of-the-art classrooms, design studios, and workshop spaces. We're going to call it the Bryant Parker Fashion Academy, he announced one day, showing me the architectural plans. Bryant Parker? I repeated, my heart skipping. Wesley, son, we've only been dating for 3 weeks. He smiled that smile that made me feel like a teenager with a crush. I'm an optimist, he said, and I know what I want. But if it makes you uncomfortable, we can call it something else. No, I said quickly, surprising myself. Bryant Parker sounds perfect. Your mother's legacy and my journey combined into something beautiful. That night, he kissed me for the first time, and it was nothing like the desperate, taking kisses I remembered from Marcus. This was giving, generous, full of promise rather than demand. Sarah and Jeremy arrived in Houston on a rainy Thursday, looking nothing like the successful, dismissive siblings who had turned me away. Sarah's designer clothes had been replaced with jeans and a t-shirt I recognized from college. Jeremy looked gaunt, exhausted, humbled by life in a way that reminded me of how I had looked after our parents passed away. We met at the house, my house, the one I had kept despite everything, the one that held our memories. They stood on the porch where they had once played as children, and I saw them both crying before I even opened the door. It looks exactly the same, Sarah whispered. You kept everything the same. Some things are worth preserving, I said, letting them in. The conversation that followed was painful, necessary, and ultimately healing. They told me about their failures. Sarah's company had collapsed due to her poor management and lack of real business acumen. Jeremy's startup had failed because he had been so focused on the glamour of being a founder that he forgot to actually build a sustainable product. We became everything we said we'd never be, Jeremy admitted. Shallow, materialistic, cruel. We thought success meant leaving everything behind, including the person who made our success possible. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. We were so ashamed of where we came from that we rejected the best part of it. You. I'm not the same person you rejected, I told them firmly. That woman who would have immediately forgiven everything and opened her home and wallet, she's gone. I've learned my worth and I won't go back to being used, even by family. They both nodded, understanding that our relationship would never be what it was, but hoping it could become something new. I offered them jobs at the academy once it opened, Sarah in administration and marketing, Jeremy in technology and digital design. But you'll start at entry level, I said. You'll earn your positions, prove yourselves. And if you ever make me feel like I felt that day you turned me away, we're done permanently. We won't, Sarah promised. We've learned what it's like to be at the bottom, to be rejected, to be seen as worthless. We'll never make anyone feel that way again. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. They had to lose everything to understand what they had thrown away. The Fashion Academy opened 6 months later, on a bright September morning that felt like the first day of the rest of my life. Wesley had spared no expense. The facilities were magnificent, the equipment top of the line, the instructors recruited from the best fashion schools in the country. But what made it special was the students. 40 women and men who had talent but no opportunity, dreams but no means, creativity that had been stifled by circumstance. "Welcome to Bryant Parker Fashion Academy," I said, standing before them in a dress I had designed and made myself. "This is not just a school. This is a place where your past doesn't define your future, where your circumstances don't limit your creativity, where your dreams are not just valid but achievable." I saw myself in their faces, the hope mixed with disbelief, the fear that this might be taken away, the desperate need to prove themselves worthy. One student, Courtney Jenkins, a single mother of 3 who had been working as a hotel maid, raised her hand. "Ms. Parker, why us? Why are you giving us this chance?" I smiled, remembering my own journey. "Because someone recently showed me that talent doesn't always come in expected packages, that sometimes the people society overlooks are the ones with the most to offer. You're here because you have something special, something that deserves to be nurtured, and because I know what it's like to have dreams that seem impossible." The academy was an instant success. Our students created designs that caught the attention of major fashion houses. We had a waiting list of applicants within 2 months. Fashion magazines wrote articles about our revolutionary approach to design education. But more importantly, lives were being changed. Women who had been told they were nothing were discovering they were everything. Marcus's trial began 3 months after the academy opened. I testified for 2 full days detailing the harassment, the humiliation, the systematic destruction of my dignity. His lawyer tried to paint me as a bitter ex-girlfriend seeking revenge, but the evidence was overwhelming. The FBI had recovered emails where he detailed his plan to frame me, messages to my siblings offering money for humiliating information, and records of his systematic theft. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Marcus Hughes was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 20. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. I expected hatred, but what I saw was worse: emptiness. The hollow look of a man who had built his entire life on cruelty and exploitation and was now paying the price. "How do you feel?" Wesley asked as we left the courthouse. "Free," I said simply. For the first time in my life, truly free. The media was there, wanting statements, but I had said everything I needed to say in court. Marcus Hughes was part of my past. My future was waiting. That future became clearer when Wesley proposed 6 months later, on the anniversary of the night we met in the supply closet. He didn't do it in some grand, public way. Instead, he took me to the building where we had both worked as cleaners, to that same supply closet where we had shared instant coffee and dreams. "This is where I fell in love with you," he said, getting down on one knee in that tiny, cramped space, "where I saw your strength, your kindness, your incredible spirit. Naomi Parker, you've transformed my life, reminded me who I really am, shown me what love really means. Will you marry me?" The ring was beautiful but not ostentatious, a classic solitaire that sparkled even in the harsh fluorescent lighting. But what made me say yes wasn't the ring or even the proposal. It was the man himself who had seen me at my lowest and chosen to lift me up, who had power but used it for good, who loved not just the successful academy director I had become, but the struggling cleaning lady I had been. "Yes," I said, pulling him to his feet so I could kiss him properly. "Yes to everything, to marriage, to partnership, to building a life together that honors where we came from while reaching for where we're going." The engagement news spread quickly, and reactions were varied. Wesley's ex-wife, Vanessa Bryant, was predictably furious. She called him Sam, screaming about how he was embarrassing their children by marrying the help. Wesley put her on speaker so I could hear, then calmly informed her that their children, who had started reaching out after seeing the news about the academy, were actually happy for him. They see that I'm with someone who makes me better, he said. Someone real, someone who knows what struggle means, someone who doesn't measure worth in dollars and social status. If you have a problem with that, it's your issue to deal with. He hung up on her mid-rant, then turned to me with a grin. I've wanted to do that for years. My family's reaction was more complex. Sarah and Jeremy, who had been working hard to rebuild our relationship while proving themselves at the academy, were genuinely happy. You deserve this, Sarah said, tears in her eyes. You deserve all of it. The success, the love, the happiness. We just wish we had celebrated you sooner instead of being part of what tried to break you. The extended family who had mocked me at that engagement party 2 years ago suddenly wanted to reconnect. My phone was flooded with messages of congratulations, invitations to lunch, requests to visit the academy. Aunt Vanessa even had the audacity to ask if I could get her daughter a spot in the program. Interesting how success changes perspectives, I said to Wesley, showing him the messages. The same people who called me toxic and cursed now want to be part of my life. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. What do you want to do about them? Nothing, I decided. They're not invited to the wedding. They don't get to celebrate what they tried to destroy. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean giving people access to hurt you again. The wedding was scheduled for the following spring, and I insisted on making my own dress. It became my therapy, my meditation, hours spent creating something beautiful from raw materials, just as I had recreated my life from the raw pain of rejection and abandonment. The dress was elegant but unique, traditional but with unexpected touches that reflected my journey, strength in the structure, softness in the flow, beauty in every carefully crafted detail. 3 months before the wedding, something unexpected happened. I discovered I was pregnant. At 41, after years of believing motherhood had passed me by, I was carrying Wesley's child. When I told him, he cried, not delicate tears, but full body-shaking sobs of joy. I thought I'd lost my chance at being a real father, he said, his hand gentle on my still flat stomach. My kids from my first marriage barely know me, but this is a chance to do it right, to be present, to be the father I always wanted to be. We decided to keep the pregnancy quiet until after the wedding, but I had to tell Sarah and Jeremy. Their reaction surprised me. Pure, uncomplicated joy. We're going to be an aunt and uncle, Jeremy said, wonder in his voice. A real family again. Sarah immediately started planning, offering to help with everything from nursery design to babysitting. You don't owe us anything, she said when I expressed surprise at her enthusiasm. But if you let us, we want to be part of this. We want to do better, be better. Especially for this little one. Watching them transform from the selfish, status-obsessed people they had become back into something resembling the siblings I had raised gave me hope that people really could change. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect Houston spring days where the humidity hadn't yet become oppressive. The ceremony was held at the academy, transformed with flowers and lights into something magical. My students had insisted on helping, creating decorations, arranging flowers, some even performing music they had written for the occasion. As I walked down the aisle, I saw the faces of people who had become my chosen family. My students, whose lives were changing because someone had believed in them. Wesley's children who had come despite their mother's objections, wanting to see their father happy. Sarah and Jeremy, standing as my maid of honor and groomsmen, finally understanding what family really meant. And at the altar, Wesley looking at me like I was his whole world, his second chance, his unexpected blessing. You're beautiful, he whispered when I reached him. But his eyes said more, that I was valued, cherished, loved not despite my struggles, but because of how I had overcome them. The ceremony was simple but profound. We wrote our own vows, and mine included a promise, not just to Wesley, but to myself. I promised to never again shrink myself to make others comfortable. I promised to own my worth, my talent, my right to take up space in this world. I promised to love fully, but never at the expense of my own dignity. Wesley's vows made everyone cry. Naomi, you taught me that real wealth isn't in bank accounts, but in character. That real success isn't in titles, but in impact. That real love isn't in taking, but in giving. I promise to spend every day making sure you never again question your worth. Never again feel alone. Never again carry burdens that should be shared. The reception was a celebration not just of our marriage, but of transformation. Several of my students spoke about how the academy had changed their lives. Brianna Russell, who had gone from being homeless to having her designs featured in a major fashion show, said, "Ms. Parker, Mrs. Bryant now, showed us that our circumstances don't define our capabilities, that where we come from doesn't determine where we're going." Even Wesley's children spoke, his daughter Alexis saying, "We weren't sure about Naomi at first. Mom had told us things, but then we met her, saw how she made Dad smile again, saw the academy and what she was building. She's not taking anything from us. She's adding to our family, showing us what resilience looks like." The surprise of the evening came when Wesley announced our pregnancy. The room erupted in joy, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly celebrated. Not pitied, not tolerated, not overlooked, but truly celebrated for who I was and what I was becoming. The next 2 years were a whirlwind of growth and joy. Our daughter, Hope Michelle Bryant, was born healthy and perfect, a mixture of Wesley's determination and what he swore was my smile. Watching Wesley with her, seeing him be the father he had always wanted to be, healed something in both of us. The academy expanded, opening a second location in Dallas and launching an online program that reached students globally. We established a scholarship fund in memory of Wesley's mother and my parents, ensuring that lack of money would never be the reason someone couldn't pursue their dreams. Sarah and Jeremy had both risen in the organization, earning their positions through hard work and genuine transformation. Sarah became our director of operations, her business acumen finally channeled towards something meaningful. Jeremy led our technology initiatives, creating innovative ways to teach design through digital platforms. They were still rebuilding, still earning back trust, but they were trying, and that meant everything. My relationship with the extended family remained distant but civil. I saw them at family functions, exchanged pleasantries, but maintained firm boundaries. They had shown me who they were when I had nothing. I wasn't obligated to let them close now that I had everything. The neighborhood where I still kept my childhood home had transformed too. Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor who had called me toxic, approached me one day when I was visiting the old house. "Naomi," she said, unable to meet my eyes, "I owe you an apology. The things I said, the way I treated you. I was projecting my own disappointments, my own fears of ending up alone. Seeing you now, seeing what you've built, I realized I was the toxic one." I accepted her apology but didn't offer friendship. "Thank you for saying that," I said simply. "I hope you find peace with yourself." Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and it certainly didn't mean allowing people back into positions where they could hurt you again. Marcus's name occasionally surfaced in the news. Appeals that were denied, attempts to reduce his sentence that failed. I felt no satisfaction in his suffering, but no sympathy either. He had made his choices and now he was living with them. The money he had stolen had been recovered and donated to the Academy's scholarship fund, turning his theft into opportunity for others. When Hope was 2, Wesley surprised me with a project he had been working on secretly. He had purchased the building where we had met, where we had both worked as cleaners, and transformed it into affordable housing for Academy students who needed a place to stay while pursuing their education. "Every room tells a story," he said, showing me the renovated spaces. "Just like ours did. Now they can tell new stories of people transforming their lives, of dreams becoming reality." The supply closet where we had hidden and talked and fallen in love was preserved as a small memorial with a plaque that read, "Sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the darkest places." My life at 45 was nothing like what I had imagined at 40. I was married to a man who saw my worth when the world didn't. I was mother to a beautiful daughter and stepmother to 2 young adults who had learned to respect and even love me. I was sister to siblings who had learned the hard way what family really meant. I was director of an academy that was changing lives daily. But more than any title or role, I was finally, fully myself. Not the sacrificial lamb who gave everything and expected nothing. Not the victim of circumstance who accepted whatever crumbs were offered. But Naomi Parker Bryant, a woman who had learned that her worth wasn't determined by others' opinions, that her value wasn't diminished by struggle, that her story wasn't over until she decided it was. One evening as I was putting Hope to bed, she asked me to tell her a story. "Tell me about when you were sad, Mama," she said with the directness only toddlers possess. "Daddy said you were sad before, but then you became happy." I thought about how to explain a journey so complex to someone so young. "Once upon a time, I began, there was a woman who gave away all her magic to others, thinking that would make them love her. But they took her magic and left her alone. She was very sad, thinking she had no magic left." "But she did?" Hope asked, eyes wide. "She did," I confirmed. "She learned that the magic wasn't something that could be taken. It was part of her, always. She just had to remember how to use it. And when she did, she created wonderful things and found people who loved her, not for her magic, but for her heart." "Like Daddy loves you?" Hope asked sleepily. "Exactly like Daddy loves me," I said, kissing her forehead. "And like I love you. Real love doesn't take, it gives. Remember that, baby. Always remember that." As I left her room, I found Wesley standing in the hallway, tears in his eyes. "You're remarkable," he said simply. "The way you've taken your pain and turned it into purpose, your struggles into strength. Our daughter is so lucky to have you as her mother." "We're all lucky," I said, leaning into his embrace. "To have found each other, to have built this life. To have learned that sometimes the best chapters come after the ones we thought would end our story." 5 years into our marriage, the Academy had become a nationally recognized institution. We had graduated over 500 students with a job placement rate of 94%. Major fashion houses recruited from our programs. 3 of our graduates had launched their own successful lines. The ripple effects were generational. Children seeing their parents transform, believing in possibilities they hadn't known existed. Sarah had married one of our instructors, a kind man named Gabriel who saw her for who she had become, not who she had been. Their wedding was small, intimate, with her asking me to walk her down the aisle. "You were more of a parent to me than anyone," she said. "It should be you." Watching her marry for love rather than status felt like completing a circle. Jeremy found his own path, starting a tech company that created affordable design software for emerging artists. His experience of failure and redemption had humbled him, made him someone who lifted others rather than climbing on their backs. "You saved me twice," he told me one day. "Once when we were kids and again when you let me come back. I won't waste either chance." The extended family continued to reach out periodically, especially when the Academy won awards or when Wesley's business ventures made headlines. Cousin Madison even sent a message saying she had been wrong about me, that she admired what I had built. I thanked her politely, but maintained my distance. Some bridges once burned didn't need rebuilding. The surprise came from an unexpected source. Marcus's mother, Linda Hughes, reached out through my lawyer. She wanted to apologize for her son, for what he had put me through. "I failed him somehow," her letter read. "I raised a man who thought cruelty was strength, who confused exploitation with success. Seeing what you've become, what you've built, while he sits in prison debates. It's a testament to character versus corruption. I'm sorry for the pain he caused you. I wrote back not to forgive Marcus, but to release his mother from guilt she didn't deserve to carry. We all make choices, I wrote. Marcus made his. They weren't your choices or your fault. Focus on your own healing, not on his mistakes. At Hope's 5th birthday party, surrounded by family, both blood and chosen, I watched my daughter play with her cousins, Sarah's twin boys and Jeremy's daughter. The house was full of laughter, of joy, of the kind of family chaos I had once dreamed of, but never thought I'd have. You did it, Wesley said, coming up behind me. Did what? I asked, though I knew what he meant. You rebuilt everything they tried to destroy. You created the family you deserved, the life you earned, the happiness they said you'd never have. He was right. At 47 bites, I had everything 27-year-old me had dreamed of and more. Not just the husband and children, but the purpose, the impact, the ability to change lives the way mine had been changed. The woman who had been mocked for being single at 40 was now married to a man who adored her. The woman who had been called toxic was now seen as transformational. The woman who had been abandoned was now surrounded by love. But the greatest transformation was internal. I no longer needed external validation to know my worth. I no longer measured my value by others' opinions. I no longer accepted less than I deserved in the name of keeping peace. I had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is having boundaries, that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, that you can't pour from an empty cup, so you must fill your own first. The Academy's 10th anniversary gala was held at the Museum of Fine Arts, with our students' designs on display alongside established artists. The theme was transformation, and I was asked to give the keynote speech. Standing at that podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, students, graduates, supporters, even some former critics who had become believers, I thought about what to say. 10 years ago, I was cleaning these buildings at night, I began, gesturing to the city skyline visible through the windows. I was 40 years old, single, mocked by family, abandoned by siblings I had raised, betrayed by a man who saw my kindness as weakness. Society had decided I was a failure, and I had started to believe it. The room was silent, everyone leaning in. But failure, I learned, is just success in progress. Every rejection was redirection towards something better. Every closed door was protection from rooms I didn't belong in. Every person who walked away was making space for people who would stay. I looked at Wesley, at Sarah and Jeremy, at my students who had become like family. The Fashion Academy isn't just about teaching design. It's about proving that transformation is possible at any age, from any starting point, despite any circumstance. It's about showing that the people society overlooks are often the ones with the most to offer. To those watching who feel forgotten, overlooked, dismissed, you are not your circumstances. You are not others' opinions. You are not your lowest moment or your biggest mistake. You are possibility waiting to unfold, strength waiting to be discovered, success waiting to be defined on your own terms. The standing ovation that followed lasted 5 minutes. But what meant more were the tears on faces of people who saw themselves in my story, who found hope in my journey, who believed for the first time that their own transformation was possible. After the gala, as Wesley and I were leaving, we passed the building where we had met. It was lit up, the affordable housing units filled with Academy students pursuing their dreams. Want to visit the supply closet? Wesley asked with a grin. For old time's sake? We went up to that tiny room, now a memorial to unexpected beginnings. Someone had added to our plaque. Below. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the darkest places. Someone had written in neat handwriting, "Thank you for showing us the light, Academy Class of 2024. No, I said softly, touching the words. Thank you for being the light. Wesley pulled me close, and we stood there in that cramped space where our love story began. where two broken people had found wholeness in each other. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I smiled, remembering the woman who had stood in this same spot years ago, defeated and ready to quit. "I'm thinking that sometimes life has to break you completely apart so it can rebuild you into who you were always meant to be. I'm thinking that every tear I cried watered seeds I didn't know I had planted. I'm thinking that 40 isn't too late, that single doesn't mean unwanted, that sacrifice isn't waste if it teaches you your worth." "And what is your worth?" Wesley asked, though he knew the answer. "Immeasurable," I said firmly, "undefinable, unlimited. Not because of what I've achieved or who loves me, but because I exist, because I survived, because I chose to transform pain into purpose." As we left the building, Hope called Wesley's phone, wanting to say goodnight. "Mama," she said when he passed me the phone, "Aunt Sarah says you're a superhero, are you?" I laughed, thinking about how to answer. "No, baby, I'm just someone who learned that even when people try to bury you, if you're a seed, you'll grow anyway." "I want to be a seed like you," she said sleepily. "You already are," I told her. "You already are." Looking back at my journey, from that family gathering where I was mocked for being 40 and single to standing here as a wife, mother, CEO, and transformer of lives, I realized that every painful moment had been preparing me for this purpose. The siblings who rejected me taught me about boundaries. Marcus's cruelty taught me about self-worth. The family's mockery taught me that others' opinions don't define reality. But Wesley's love taught me that I was worthy of genuine care. My students taught me that impact matters more than image. Hope taught me that it's never too late to start a family. And the academy taught me that when you lift others, you rise yourself. If you're watching this and you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond, feeling like life has passed you by, like your chances are gone, like you're too old, too broken, too far behind, know this: your story isn't over. Your transformation is still possible. Your best chapters can still be written. I was mocked for being single at 40, but I found love that was worth the wait. I was abandoned by family, but I built a better one. I was cleaning toilets, but I ended up creating an institution that changes lives. Not because I was special or lucky, but because I refused to let others' limitations become my reality. So what would you do if you were in my position? If your siblings came back after rejecting you, if you had the chance to rebuild or walk away, if love showed up in unexpected places, if opportunity knocked after years of closed doors, would you have the courage to answer? Would you have the faith to try again? Would you have the strength to transform? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me your own story of transformation, of overcoming mockery, of finding love and success after society said it was too late. Let's create a community of people who refuse to be defined by age, relationship status, or others' opinions. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or made you think differently about your own possibilities, please subscribe to Pressify Stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our videos. Give this video a thumbs up. It helps us reach more people who need to hear that it's never too late to transform. Share this with someone who needs reminding that they're not too old, not too broken, not too far gone to create something beautiful. We have over 100 stories on this channel, each one designed to inspire, motivate, and remind you that transformation is always possible. Remember, you're not watching this by accident. Perhaps you needed to hear that being single doesn't diminish your worth, that sacrifice isn't stupid, that family isn't always blood, that love can find you at any age, that success can be redefined at any stage, that mockery from others often reveals their limitations, not yours. From a woman who was laughed at for being single at 40 to all of you facing your own judgments and rejections, keep going. Your Wesley, your academy, your transformation is waiting. You just have to be brave enough to believe you deserve it, because you do. You absolutely do. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Now go write your own transformation story. The world is waiting to see who you become when you stop letting others tell you who you are. This is Naomi Parker Bryant, signing off with love, hope, and absolute faith in your ability to transform your life, no matter where you're starting from. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful things really do grow in the darkest places. You just have to be willing to be the seed. We'll see you in the next video.